I welcome you to my channel. Subscribe and listen to my new stories every day. I notice a strange business card on the floor next to our table as my wife Grace and I have coffee in our usual cafe. The place is quiet today, just the hum of the espresso machine and the soft chatter of a few regulars. Grace is focused on her cappuccino, stirring it with unnecessary precision, her eyes darting everywhere but to mine. That's when I see it, crisp, white, and oddly out of place. I bend down, pick it up, and Grace flinches. It's subtle, but I catch it, the slight tremor in her hand, the way her breath hitches. The card is plain, with a name I don't recognize and a phone number printed in small, neat letters. Below that, 2 words, Private Investigator. I frown, turning the card over in my fingers, and glance at Grace. Her face is a shade paler than before, and she's staring hard at her coffee, as if willing it to disappear. "Did you drop this?" I ask, holding the card up. She forces a laugh, but it's strained. I've never seen that before. Her denial is too quick, too rehearsed. I feel a knot forming in my stomach, a familiar unease creeping in. I slip the card into my pocket without another word, but the tension between us lingers like a storm cloud, unspoken but heavy. Grace mumbles something about using the restroom and practically bolts from her chair. I sit there, heart racing, trying to piece together the significance of the card. Why would Grace react like that? Who is this investigator, and what could they possibly have to do with her? Then, a reckless idea hits me. What if I text this number from her phone? If there's something to find out, it's worth the risk. Grace's phone is lying on the table, unguarded. I grab it, my fingers moving before doubt can hold me back. I open her messaging app and type out a message to the number on the card. "Good afternoon, how's the case going?" Almost immediately, the phone buzzes with a reply. I can feel my pulse in my ears as I read the text, following up now. The person is at a restaurant drinking wine. Should I continue surveillance? My breath catches. This makes no sense. What person? What surveillance? The more I think about it, the more a strange realization dawns on me. What if Grace isn't just being investigated? What if she's the one who hired the investigator? But who could she be spying on? Grace returns, her smile brittle and forced. I keep my face neutral, sliding her phone back where it was before she notices. "Everything all right?" she asks, her tone light, but there's a tightness around her eyes. "Yeah," I reply, mirroring her fake calm. But my mind is already racing with plans. I need to get to the bottom of this. And if Grace has secrets, I'll make sure I'm the one who uncovers them. That evening, I excuse myself early, saying I have work to catch up on. Grace seems relieved, barely putting up a pretense of disappointment. As soon as I'm alone, I go through the phone logs and find a series of recent calls to the same number. The investigators. My suspicions deepen, and a twisted sense of satisfaction fills me. Grace has been hiding something, and now it's my turn to play detective. The next morning, I head to the address mentioned in the investigator's message. It's a cozy restaurant tucked in a quiet part of town. I sit at the bar, pretending to enjoy a drink, while scanning the room for anything out of place. After 20 minutes, I see him, a man I know all too well. My own lover, the one I thought was only mine. He's seated at a corner table, sipping wine, looking around like he's waiting for someone. The pieces click into place with brutal clarity. Grace is cheating on me with him, and now she suspects him of cheating, enough to hire a private investigator. I feel a bitter laugh bubble up inside me. The irony is cruel, and it burns like acid. My wife and my lover, tangled in a web of deceit I hadn't seen coming. I step outside to clear my head, but my thoughts are a whirlpool of rage and betrayal. She thought she could outsmart me, play both sides without consequence. But I'm done being a pawn in her game. If Grace thinks she's the only one with secrets, she's in for a rude awakening. That night, I confront her, keeping my expression carefully controlled. "So, did you enjoy your wine today?" I ask casually as we prepare dinner together. Grace freezes, a knife hovering midair. She recovers quickly, but her voice wavers. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, nothing," I say, leaning closer. "Just that private investigator you've been texting. I know you hired him." Her face drains of color. She tries to stammer out a denial, but it's too late. I see the fear in her eyes, the way her hands tremble. For the first time in years, I feel like I have the upper hand. And I know exactly how to use it. I spend the next few days planning, making sure every step is calculated. I send anonymous tips to the investigator, feeding him false leads. I leak secrets that I know will drive a wedge between Grace and her lover, and I watch as their relationship crumbles under the weight of suspicion. Grace becomes paranoid, her composure unraveling with each passing day. Then, one night, I drop the bomb. "I know everything, Grace," I tell her, my voice cold. "I know about your little affair. And I know you hired someone to spy on him." How pathetic is that? Cheating on me, only to think he was cheating on you. She stares at me, eyes wide with shock, before anger overtakes her. "You don't understand," she snaps, her voice rising. "I thought he was different. I thought he cared about me." I laugh, a harsh, bitter sound. "And I thought you cared about me, but here we are." She crumbles then, the anger giving way to tears. But I don't feel pity. I feel nothing but a cold, satisfying detachment. This is what she deserves. And I'm not done yet. We file for divorce the following week, and I make sure to drag her through every humiliating detail of our life together. I expose her infidelity to her friends, make sure she's left isolated, alone. I take everything I can in the settlement, leaving her with the bare minimum. By the time the papers are signed, Grace is a shadow of the woman she once was. As I walk out of the courtroom, I don't look back. She betrayed me, and I've made sure she paid the price. We are done, our lives split like a snapped thread, never to be tangled together again. But as I step into the cool evening air, I can't shake the feeling that this is only the beginning. And that somewhere out there, the other players in this twisted game still have moves left to make. The thought sends a shiver down my spine, but I smile. Whatever happens next, I'm ready for it. Weeks have passed since the divorce, but Grace's betrayal still seethes beneath my skin. It's not enough that I've left her broken and disgraced, I want her to suffer as I did. As I sit alone in my apartment, the silence feels too loud, pressing in on me, fueling my thoughts of revenge. The image of Grace's tears, her face crumpling when I confronted her, brings a bitter satisfaction, but it's not enough. She's still out there, living her life, probably moving on. I decide to dig deeper into her world, find the cracks where I can exploit her further. I pick up my phone and scroll through the old messages I retrieved from Grace's device before we separated. Among them, there are texts to her lover, the one who thought he could steal her away. I haven't forgotten him. If she thought she could hide her sins, I'll make sure she faces them in the harshest light. But first, I'll deal with him. I make my way to the restaurant where I saw him drinking wine that day. I know his habits now, his schedule. Every Thursday, he's here, dining alone. I walk through the front door with purpose, my heart thumping against my ribs. I spot him instantly, in his usual corner, and I approach his table with a calmness that feels almost unnatural. He looks up, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to recognition, then to confusion. "David," he says, his tone wary, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to see you anywhere," I reply coldly, sliding into the chair across from him without waiting for an invitation. I take a moment to study him, the man who was sleeping with my wife while pretending to be my friend. "We need to talk." He glances around, trying to appear casual, but I can see the tension in his jaw, the flicker of discomfort in his eyes. "About what?" Grace. I let her name hang in the air like a curse. His face tightens, and I feel a twisted pleasure surge through me. She hired a private investigator to follow you. Did you know that? He stiffens. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. She thought you were cheating on her, I continue, leaning forward. Imagine that, the woman you were sneaking around with, accusing you of doing the same thing she did to me. The color drains from his face, and he stares at me, the realization sinking in. You're lying, he says, his voice low, but there's no conviction behind it. I chuckle, the sound bitter and sharp. You can believe what you want, but the truth is, you were never the only one. She had doubts, and she acted on them. Hired someone to spy on you, because that's how much she trusted you. I pause, letting the words sink in. Now, how does it feel to be the fool? He slumps back in his chair, a shadow of doubt passing over his features. If that's true, he mutters, why are you telling me this? What do you want? I lean back, considering my words carefully. What I want is for Grace to realize that everything she did, every lie, every betrayal, has consequences. And you're going to help me. He looks at me with a mixture of skepticism and something else, fear, maybe. And why the hell would I help you? I fix him with a hard stare. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you did. Your wife, your colleagues. You think your little secret won't get out? I'll burn your life to the ground if I have to. He looks away, jaw clenched tight, and I know I've struck a nerve. He's silent for a moment, weighing his options, and then he lets out a resigned sigh. Fine. What do you want me to do? Simple, I say, my voice low and steady. You're going to feed her exactly what I want her to hear. You're going to make her believe that you've been seeing someone else on the side, that the investigator was right. He raises an eyebrow, doubt flickering across his face. You want me to lie to her? Oh, it's not a lie, I reply with a dark smile. It's just not the whole truth. Reluctantly, he agrees to play his part, and over the next few weeks, I orchestrate the unraveling of Grace's new world. With every planted lie, every piece of fabricated evidence, her paranoia grows. I watch from the sidelines as her suspicions consume her, eating away at the last remnants of the confidence she once exuded. One evening, David sends me a message, she's asking questions. I think she's starting to believe it. I read the words and feel a thrill of victory. It's time for the final phase. The following weekend, I make sure to be at the same cafe where Grace and I had found that business card. I arrive early, choosing a table with a clear view of the entrance. When Grace walks in, I can see the strain on her face, the fatigue in her eyes. She's looking around, as if expecting someone else, but then she spots me and her expression hardens. I stand as she approaches. Surprised to see me? I ask. What do you want, David? She snaps, crossing her arms defensively. You already took everything in the divorce. I'm not here about that, I say, my voice dropping to a whisper as I step closer. I'm here to show you what's left. Her eyes narrow. What are you talking about? David, I say, the other David, her lover, appearing just in time, walking in through the door. He meets my gaze, then hers, his face contorted with a look of forced remorse. I'm sorry, Grace. I tried to hide it, but... What is this? Grace stammers, her voice barely a whisper. She glances between us, confusion and dawning horror spreading across her face. You were right, I say, enjoying the moment far too much. About him. He was seeing someone else. I give her a mocking smile. I just didn't think you'd ever find out like this. She stares at David, betrayal etched in every line of her face. Is this true? She asks, her voice cracking. After everything? David looks at her, then drops his gaze. I didn't mean for it to happen. But yes, there's someone else. Grace's face contorts with a mix of pain and rage, and I feel a sense of cruel satisfaction wash over me. I've shattered what was left of her world, and there's no coming back from this. As she storms out of the cafe, tears streaming down her cheeks, I turn to the other David. Good job, I say, and without another word, I walk out, leaving him to deal with the fallout. My revenge is far from complete, but today, I've won another battle. The war, however, is just getting started. Grace's life is in freefall, just as I intended. After the cafe confrontation, rumors start swirling around her social circles. I made sure of it, feeding her friends just enough details to fuel their curiosity and doubt. Now, she's floundering, struggling to regain her footing while everyone whispers behind her back. But I'm not satisfied. Not yet. There's one last card I'm ready to play, a final blow to ensure she'll never recover. I decide to push things further by digging into her career. Grace has always prided herself on being the perfect professional, dependable, untouchable. But even the strongest reputations can crumble with the right pressure. I've spent the last week gathering dirt, reaching out to old colleagues of hers, probing for weaknesses. And I've found something useful, a confidential deal she helped broker a few years back, one that skirted the edges of legality. Nothing concrete enough to take to the authorities, but enough to cause some serious damage if the right people found out. This morning, I make my move. I arrive at her office building, holding a brown envelope filled with carefully curated documents. I've included some genuine paperwork mixed with fabricated details to paint a picture of professional misconduct, just enough to cast doubt. I march up to the receptionist, flashing a charming smile. I need to drop this off for Grace, I say, casually placing the envelope on the counter. The receptionist looks up, wary. I can leave it here for her. I shake my head, keeping my tone friendly but firm. No, I'd prefer it gets to her personally. It's rather urgent. She hesitates, then picks up the phone. One moment. As she makes the call, I step back, blending into the background while the chaos unfolds. A few minutes later, Grace appears in the lobby, her expression already strained from the stress I've piled onto her in recent weeks. Her eyes narrow when she sees me, a mix of surprise and suspicion flaring up. "What are you doing here, David?" she asks, her voice laced with irritation. "Just delivering something you should see." I push the envelope toward her, enjoying the slight tremor in her hands as she takes it. "Consider it a courtesy." She glares at me, ripping the seal and flipping through the pages inside. As her eyes scan the contents, her face pales. "What the hell is this?" she demands, her voice barely controlled. "It's a collection of your greatest hits," I reply with a cold smile. Let's just say that some people would be very interested in learning about these questionable deals. Her jaw clenches, anger flaring in her eyes. "You're making a mistake, David. You have no idea what you're doing." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing," I shoot back. "You destroyed my life, and I'm returning the favor." She takes a step closer, her voice dropping to a low, venomous tone. "If you think you can scare me with this, you're delusional. I've handled worse than you." I smirk, undeterred. "Then why do you look so worried?" Without waiting for a response, I turn and walk away, leaving her standing in the lobby, clutching that envelope like it's a ticking time bomb. She'll try to spin it, of course, to keep the damage contained, but it's too late. I've set the wheels in motion, and now there's no stopping the fallout. Days later, I hear the first murmurs, colleagues talking, speculation growing about Grace's involvement in some shady business. The board of her company catches wind of it, and I know from a well-placed source that she's being pulled into meetings, interrogated about the allegations. It's just a matter of time before the pressure forces her to crack. The perfect opportunity presents itself a week later. I'm at a bar, enjoying the buzz of my small victory, when my phone vibrates. It's a text from Grace's number, but I know instantly it's not her. It's David, the other David. "She wants to meet you." Tonight. Says it's important. I grin, replying quickly, where? An hour later, I arrive at the spot he mentioned, a dimly lit rooftop bar downtown, away from prying eyes. The air is thick with tension as I step onto the terrace, and I spot her instantly, standing at the railing, a drink in hand. David is there too, off to the side, his expression unreadable. David, Grace says, turning to face me as I approach. There's a coldness in her voice, an edge that wasn't there before. I see you've been busy. I have, I admit, keeping my tone light. And it seems you have, too. She fixes me with a hard stare. You've made a big mistake. Those documents you sent, they're not just going to hurt me. They're going to hurt you, too. I laugh, a sharp sound in the still night. Nice try, but I know exactly what's in those papers. There's nothing there that can touch me. Grace's lips curl into a cruel smile. You think you're so clever, don't you? But you don't know everything. Before I can respond, she turns to the other David. Tell him, she says, her voice steely. He steps forward, his face strained with guilt and something else, fear. David, there's something I need to tell you, he begins, his voice barely audible over the city noise. I wasn't just seeing Grace. I was working for her. I feel the ground shift beneath my feet. Working for her? I echo, incredulous. What the hell are you talking about? Grace's eyes gleam with satisfaction as she steps closer. Did you think you were the only one setting a trap? I knew you were coming after me, David. I had him feeding you just enough information to lead you exactly where I wanted. I'm stunned, trying to piece together what she's saying. You used him, to manipulate me? She nods, her expression triumphant. You were too predictable. It wasn't hard to turn the tables. Rage surges through me, hot and uncontrollable. So, what now? You think you've won? I hiss. Her smile falters, just slightly. This isn't about winning. It's about survival. But if you don't back off, I promise you'll regret it. I step closer, our faces inches apart. You'll regret this, Grace, I whisper, my voice dripping with venom. I'm not done yet. Not by a long shot. As I walk away, the night air feels colder, sharper. My mind races, the sting of betrayal fueling my determination. She may have thought she was a step ahead, but I'm not beaten. If anything, I'm more resolved than ever to bring her down, no matter what it takes. The game has only just begun, and I'm ready for the next round. The revelation of Grace's counterplan burns like a hot iron in my chest. The betrayal cuts deeper than I could have imagined. She played me, used my own lover to feed me false leads while she watched me twist in the wind. It's almost impressive how thoroughly she turned the tables. But I'm not a man to accept defeat. If she wants a war, I'll give her one. And I won't just hurt her, I'll destroy her. For the next few days, I prepare. It takes planning, precision. I'm no longer interested in just embarrassing her or tarnishing her reputation, I want her completely broken. So, I set my trap, starting with the weakest link, David. If he could be manipulated once, he can be manipulated again. This time, I'll make sure he doesn't even see it coming. I track David's movements, finding him at his usual gym one evening. I watch him leave, and just as he's unlocking his car, I approach from behind. He doesn't notice me until I'm right there, pulling his arm and pinning him against the vehicle. David. I hiss, the surprise and fear flashing across his face bringing me a sick pleasure. What the hell, man, he stammers, trying to twist free. But I press harder, my voice low and dangerous. Listen carefully, I whisper, you're going to help me one last time. And if you even think about running to Grace, I'll ruin you in ways you can't even imagine. He gulps, the panic rising in his eyes. I don't want to get involved anymore. You're already involved, I snap, cutting him off. And you're going to do exactly what I say. I let him go, shoving him away from the car. Tell Grace you have some new information about me, something urgent that she'll want to hear. David hesitates, his gaze flickering with uncertainty. What kind of information? Tell her I've found out who hired the investigator, the one who was supposedly following you. She'll take the bait, I say with a cold smile. She'll meet with you. He stares at me, knowing he's caught between a rock and a hard place. After a moment, he nods reluctantly. Fine. I'll do it. The next day, David sends Grace a message just as instructed, and I wait for her response. As expected, she agrees to meet him that night at a quiet location, an old industrial complex on the edge of town, long abandoned and far from prying eyes. It's perfect. As night falls, I arrive early and hide in the shadows, watching the scene unfold. Grace pulls up first, stepping out of her car with a wary glance around the deserted complex. David arrives soon after, his car crunching over gravel as he parks beside hers. They meet in the middle of the lot, their voices carrying faintly through the night. What's this about? Grace asks, her tone sharp and impatient. David fidgets nervously. I found out that the investigator you hired wasn't working alone. He was getting information from someone else, someone connected to. Before he can finish, I step out from behind a stack of old crates, a crowbar clenched in my hand. Surprise, I say, my voice echoing across the empty lot. Grace spins around, shock and anger flashing across her face. David, what is this? She demands, turning to her lover, who now looks as if he's about to collapse from fear. This is the end, I reply, advancing toward them. I'm done playing games. You both betrayed me, and now you're going to pay. Grace takes a step back, her eyes narrowing. You're insane, David. If you think you can threaten us. I don't give her a chance to finish. I swing the crowbar hard, aiming for David. He tries to dodge, but I catch him on the shoulder, and he collapses to the ground, crying out in pain. Grace lets out a startled scream, but I'm already moving toward her. She scrambles back, reaching into her bag for something, her phone, maybe, but I lash out, striking the ground near her feet, making her jump. Did you really think I'd just let you walk away from all this? I shout, my voice trembling with rage. You took everything from me, Grace. Now, I'm taking it all back. You're a monster, she spits, her voice trembling as she rises to her feet. You couldn't just let it go, could you? Let it go. I laugh bitterly, advancing on her again. No. You see, letting go would have been mercy. And you don't deserve mercy. David stirs on the ground, clutching his shoulder. David, please, don't do this, he gasps, struggling to rise. Ignoring his pleas, I focus on Grace. I'm going to make sure that by the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd never crossed me. She backs away, her eyes darting around for an escape route. You think you can get away with this? She challenges. People know about us. They'll come looking. Let them come, I sneer, raising the crowbar again. But just as I'm about to swing, a thought strikes me, something even darker, more insidious than physical violence. I drop the crowbar, the clatter echoing ominously in the silence. No, I say, stepping back with a twisted smile. Hurting you like this isn't enough. I have a better idea. Grace's face pales, her confusion evident. What are you talking about? I pull out my phone and tap the screen, opening a live streaming app. I've been recording this whole conversation, I say, gesturing to the phone. Everything you just said, all your denials and lies, it's all been broadcast to everyone we know. The truth is out there, Grace. Your friends, your family, even your colleagues, they've all seen it. Her eyes widen in horror as she processes my words. You wouldn't, she breathes, her voice barely a whisper. Oh, I did, I reply, a ruthless satisfaction spreading through me. You and David, caught red-handed in the middle of your own web of lies. Everyone knows what you did now. There's no hiding, no escaping. She stares at me, her expression a mixture of fury and despair. You bastard, she snarls. You think you've won? I nod, my smile cold and unforgiving. This isn't about winning, Grace. It's about making sure you lose everything. Just like I did. As I turn and walk away, the last thing I hear is her broken sob, followed by David's pitiful attempts to console her. I don't look back. There's nothing left for me there. I've taken my revenge, left them both in ruins, and now, there's only the hollow satisfaction of a grudge fulfilled. Grace and I part for good that night, the weight of our hatred burning the last remnants of our connection to ash. We'll never see each other again. And that's exactly how it should be.